Yay Media Group.
Holidays at any time are always ginned up with some degree of emotion, positive or negative for people. And when things aren't what they want it to be, like one approach is they just suck it up and it's an obligation and it's never fun, or they like cut off and decide they're not going to do it. And either those extremes long term wind up like not being great for people, and instead like having them think about getting grounded in what's the meaning of why do we as humans even have holidays, like what's the reason, other than going to Black Friday sales. What's the reason for the holiday? And it's these rituals of connection, of pausing, reflecting, some degree of a lot of different traditions that make you feel, reminiscent. All that's why we do it. And so it's all made up. So I don't mean to say it from a religious point of view made up, but I mean, it's like we've all decided to do it a certain way as in our families. So you can do something different if you want as well, but it's a matter of like, how do we have the holidays work for us rather than being this looming thing that we either hate to think about or this thing that we just kind of like suck up and do and get over with.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Welcome to this week's episode of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and I am thrilled to be joined again by Dr. John Sawyer. This is his third time with us. Dr. Sawyer is a neuropsychologist at Oxford Health, where he co-directs the Center for Brain Health and serves as the medical director for the professional staff experience. And he will share more about this as we get into our conversation. If you've listened to our previous podcast episodes, you'll know that we've talked about all kinds of stuff from, the benefits, the health benefits of trying new things, how this helps to rewire and reshape our brains, to how do we protect ourselves from some of the misleading stuff that's out there. So maybe social media, traditional marketing, things that seem too good to be true. Why do we fall prey to it? Why do we believe some of these things? And how can we protect ourselves a little bit better? Today, we're shifting to something a little bit more personal, and we're talking about not just holidays coming up, but just in events in general, those things that maybe we build up to such a degree that they also end up being surrounded with a little bit of stress, extra emotion, extra expectation that comes with this. So we're going to talk about what's really behind these stressors, and really not just the cliche family stuff, not just, okay, how do you avoid politics or how do you avoid religion or, those weird questions from Uncle Joe, but what are some of the things that are maybe a little bit more subtle? The challenges of maybe feeling like there's a lack of interest in you or what you've got going on, or there's that pressure to do everything right, to have everything perfect. There's the person who maybe feels like they're giving way more than others are. And what do we do about that? How do we, in some cases, accept it, but without having that resentment? How do we protect our own sense of calm also in all of this? And a lot of times when we're talking about holidays, we're talking about navigating the holidays healthfully. And so we've done so many different episodes that are covering this in different ways. So how to do healthy holiday baking. And so I'll link to some of these episodes, but how do we do healthy holiday baking? What's that healthy holiday gift guide that we can do? How do we take some of our favorite recipes and remake them to be, more nutritious, but still kind of in line with the holiday theme? And this is just as important, so when we talk about gifting and movement and wellness and all these different ways, how we're actually experiencing the moment and how we're enjoying ourselves, hopefully, or how much we're enjoying ourselves, how much we're letting ourselves just really be ourselves and be comfortable and soaking it in and making the most of our time with the people that we're spending through the holidays. I think that's really more important than any of the other things of healthy holiday baking and all of that. So those are sort of the surroundings, what gives it that holiday flair. But what Dr. Sawyer and I are talking about today is really, I think, kind of the essence of what really matters. How do we make the most of this preciously short time that we have with friends and family? So with that, welcome, Dr. Sawyer. I'm excited to have you back.
It's great to be back. Third time's a charm. So I'm excited.
Anytime I have a topic, I'm like, maybe this will be a fit. And you're good if we say John versus Dr. Sawyer.
Yeah, right. Please. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If I said, call me Dr. Sawyer, hopefully your audience would roll their eyes. And
so tell us a little bit, tell us your background, your expertise, kind of your, you'll do a better job of that than me. And also a little bit about your role with Ochsner Health. And I love it. I love your experience, and I love what you bring to employees and all at Ochsner as well as patients.
Yeah, so I have kind of two hats. One hat, clinically, I'm a neuropsychologist. That's where I help run our dementia assessment and care programs system-wide at Ochsner. Clinically, before I even became a neuropsychologist, I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. So I am very excited for our conversation today because so much of it involves how people decide to blend traditions and how families navigate this stuff. So I'm excited to talk about that. Another hat I wear at Ochsner is in our Office of Wellbeing. We know that healthcare is high impact, but also heavy, heavy work. We're dealing with the lives of real people every single day. And at times that water we swim in just gets in us, where there's a lot of stress, a lot of drama, a lot of pain. And so how do we create a workplace culture that supports our employees so they can be in healthcare and in it for the long haul, rather than opting out? And that's really what our office is designed to do. Like, how do we coach people? How do we support people? How do we help develop them in ways that they can kind of thrive at work and in their life? Kind of both those things kind of coexist.
I think it's really cool that Ochsner offers that. And there's, that's kind of a quick high level summary, but it also goes really a lot deeper. You've led different experiences with our teams, and each time our team has just really taken a lot away from it and continues to reference back to, remember when Dr. Sawyer said this? And, just when you present to a group, large or small, there's such a connection. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
With holidays, and again, I think we'll say holidays because as this episode is dropping, it's going to be like right in the thick of it. But this is really, I kind of think it's a year round. It's anytime there's big events, there's big gatherings, and a lot of times there's maybe a pressure or expectations that we have building up to it. So let's talk about what's going on with that. Where do we even start? Because there's the expectations. There might be different habits or behaviors or mindsets that sort of clash. There can be feeling not fully seen or feeling underappreciated. There's so much that goes into it. Where do we want to start to talk about what's going on? Some of the key things that people are experiencing, and maybe some mindset shifts that we can bring.
Yeah, that's great. I'm down for the conversation. It'll be fun.
Do you have any that you would say are sort of the top things that you hear people as it's around things where I would say a lot of times it's around family, but it's not always family and it's not always holidays. But what are some of the things that are top of mind for you as we hear about this? Again, we know there's the cliche about politics, religion, and certain things like that people always, you just expect that question from Uncle Joe and you're ready. Yeah. You've got yourself, like, you're kind of bracing yourself for it. But beyond that, what are some of the things that people are experiencing?
I think one of the things that people frequently get in their head about is how much of it is obligation versus what I want to do during the holidays. And then all of a sudden you're collecting so many, I have to go visit these people, and we have to have Thanksgiving look this way, and we have to cater to who all's coming and all their different dietary preferences and needs. And what if we don't have someone stay at our house? Or what if we do? All of these obligations around the holidays make it not worth it for people or make it exhausting. And what I would encourage people to do is to kind of step back from it and ask themselves, what do they remember from their experience of holidays that they really like, that they want to keep? And what do they remember that they don't like, that they want to keep? I remember, I'll never forget seeing, as a kid, I was the one boy who sat in the kitchen with all my aunts, my mom and my aunts and grandmother, and they were in the kitchen cooking, cleaning, like doing all this work. And the men are all in the living room watching football.
Right.
Is that, you have that picture in your head in the South? And I remember thinking, this is unfair. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense. And so what we decided to do for Thanksgiving for many years is have what's called Friendsgiving, where we just had it with our friends rather than doing it with our extended family, not because we don't love them, but we wanted to eat what we wanted to eat. And so we did it every other year, just as a way to like see our family, but then also have time with our friends and make it what we want. Now what we do as well is we travel every other year too, so that way we can be somewhere and just enjoy. Like, I'll go out to eat. I don't need to like have the turkey and like the stuffing and everyone's yelling in the kitchen about it burning, And so the first thing I would have people think about is, what have you really loved growing up and in your life and you want to keep? And what do you not want to keep? And start to like label that, get that up and out first.
So one of the things that, some of the questions that I hear from people, and again, sometimes related to the holidays, sometimes not. And sometimes these are just conversations that are shared with me, not necessarily a specific complaint, but things that I've just picked up on hearing kind of those elements that may feel a little bit painful for people. And whether they're really acknowledging it or not, these are just like snippets that I've heard. One is, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that sometimes when they're with family, and it could be the people closest to us, it could be that extended family, but they'll feel like there's not a curiosity or an interest in what they're doing. And so I'll think about people who are really, they're really successful in their careers. They're really, and that's a large part of their life is this. And it might be something, a lot of the work that maybe I do, someone may say, oh, I read your article in the paper, or I see you on TV. So they know, they kind of have an idea, or they see Eat Fit at restaurants. So they kind of have an idea of what Molly does for a living. But other people who their jobs maybe aren't visible, but they're really amazing, and this is a big part of their life, that when the people in their family or people they're closest to aren't saying what's going on with this, or they don't seem to show an interest, that can hurt. And so why does it sting so deeply? And, and even as much as someone may say, okay, I'm going to kind of, I'm used to that, but they're not, it still seems like it kind of is a little bit painful. And I think that can happen year round, but it can especially happen when we have that big group together over holidays.
It is. And there are frequently years that I'll remember saying, no one asked me how I am.
Right.
Or
right.
What are you doing? And with your life. And I think one of the things that I would ask people to think about is, how often are those same people asking anyone else at the dinner about their life? And the reality is that more likely than not, it's not like you're the only one they're not asking. They're not asking anyone else about how they're doing.
That's a great point.
And, and so then it takes the personal sting out of it first. And then the second part of it is, we're really left with two options. One is to say, hey, Tim, let's make up this person named Tim. I really wish you would ask me about my life. And most people are not going to want to do that.
Right. It feels very exposed.
So then if they're not, it does. Hey, I was just here and I'm sitting around and no one said, how are you doing? And what's your work like? Now you could do that for sure. And maybe people would go, oh my God, we're so sorry. Yeah. How are you? All right. with my kids, they have this thing now, Molly, kids never ask how we're doing as parents. And so several times when I was like frustrated in the car, I was like, well, no one said, how's dad's day? Um, and so my kids now will say, well, how was your day? And so maybe you do need to ask, like, and get that up and out sometimes. Many people just aren't aware. They aren't, it's not like they're sitting there going, I'm not going to ask because that's going to piss them off. It's more likely an incuriosity that a lot of human beings have. They just don't do it.
I think that's a really good point it's not just you that they're not, that's just not, a lot of people are kind of, they're thinking about what they've got going on and they're not asking about anybody, and that's just kind of the nature of it. And I think if you kind of frame it that way, it does feel less personal. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
And here's another thing too. I would want to, some people, I'm sure these people like this who have very high profile jobs. And there are times when I will wonder, do they even want me to ask? Because they're so like over talking about work. And so then I'll get a little bit like, wait, if I say like, oh, because let's say they're really involved in politics. So I'm like, hey, so then they're like, do they want to talk about that? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, so that could also be what's going on, is that they don't want to say, in healthcare, I'm sure you get this all the time. Like, they ask for advice. So they're probably like, hey, Molly, what about this to eat? Or what about that to eat?
And I think in those types of roles like yours and mine, there's a familiarity, that people can hear and, oh, let me tell you what I eat for breakfast. Or for you, like, let me tell you about this problem that I had or this challenge that I had. But maybe other people who their work is a little bit more, it's not so clear to people, then they're not even sure where to start to ask. Yeah. So I think having that awareness of that. And so if someone is feeling that way and they're not going to say, hey, Tim, I wish that you would ask me how I'm doing. What are some of the things that you would say to either to stir up that conversation or to accept it and feel comfortable with that?
So two things. One thing that I do sometimes is I'll say, oh my gosh, work has been really cool lately. Can I share some stuff that's been going on at work? Now, if they're a narcissist and they say no, well, I would want to tell them anyway.
Right.
The other is to ask someone about their life, their work, how's work going? And there is a normal social mirroring that, like, I've asked you for 3 minutes how you are. And if you're like, and walk away, well, I don't think that was going to work regardless.
Anyway,
does that make sense? And so get curious about them and let them have a chance to ask you. The other is, are you going to the holidays to have that, like, hey, I'm going here only to get my cup filled with talking about myself and my work. Sometimes you want to do that. You want to kind of like have a place with your family that's safe where you can brag about yourself. Sometimes the holidays aren't it. Everyone's stressed and moving around and got all kinds of things going on. So it may be that, like, maybe we need to schedule some more phone calls, or something like that to talk through it. So those are some ways that I might consider approaching it.
And I think ultimately realizing that so many people have other things top of mind. They're worried about whatever's going on in their own head, and it has nothing to do really with us or lack of it, even a lack of interest in us, because it's consistently across. Maybe they're not asking others. So for the person who says, hey, there's kind of an imbalance in effort that is being put out here. The person who maybe is single or doesn't have kids, has a flexible job, and they're the one that feels like, I'm always going to all the different family things, and I'm the one who's traveling everywhere and kind of always on the go to be with these others. What about having, even if there's another place that maybe is a more neutral place that could be that anchor for other people to come closer to them, but they feel like they're always the one putting that effort out there. What's kind of the guidance here to either maybe bring about a little bit of shift in patterns on this, or having someone kind of reset their mindset so that they don't have that resentment building?
It's great. It happens in every family. And there's this kind of term called relational reciprocity, where, like, am I getting as much as I'm giving? Does it feel a level of imbalance where I'm always going, or we're always hosting? How many times in families where the family that has the bigger house, or they have a little more money, they're the ones paying for it because they kind of feel like they should.
Right.
And there's a little bit of an imbalance in that way. Or like you mentioned, someone who doesn't have kids and needs to, it's just easier for them to travel. Or they're younger and not older. There are all kinds of variables. Right. And I would encourage everyone to think of it as like, this is just how we have decided to do things. It doesn't mean that everyone has said, you have to be the one to do it. And so then you have to own your role in always saying, yeah, I'll travel. Yeah, I'll travel. Yeah, I'll host. And so then the next part, which is uncomfortable, is saying, hey, this year I don't want to host, or this year I don't want to travel. And then the scary part is, what if they all say they don't want to come to my house, right, or they don't all want to, and that will feel hurt. Absolutely. And so then there's the, okay, so that's why I was always going, because I really worried what would happen is they all said, well, then we don't want to travel either. Okay. And so then what are you going to do instead? It does shift the dynamic a little bit, but I would want people who feel like they're giving too much. The only real solution to that is calling it out in like a calm way. Like, I don't want to do this year, or I would like something different. And can we talk about that? Can we renegotiate it? And most of the time when it's with people who are going to have a healthy conversation, like, yeah, let's talk through this. What will happen is people will say, yeah, but we have kids, or, but like, you have more money. And then all of a sudden, that's when we devolve right into the argument phase of it. And so I think both things can be true. Like, yeah, when you don't have kids, you are more mobile. That just is easier. When you do have more money, it is easier to like host. All that's true. And I think that I would not want someone to have it or come because out of an obligation. Right. Like, that's not why I would want that. And so opening up for the conversation, I think, is the first part. It's going to be really revealing. Either they're going to like, oh, we're really sorry, or yeah, it's just really hard for us to travel, so let's not do it this year. Okay.
I'm also thinking about it from the perspective of the others, the family, or that to, sort of just that reminder to express gratitude, because if that person is always the one taking that extra step or doing the extra of, like I said, hosting or traveling or whatever it is, and you feel like it's really acknowledged and it's valued and people are grateful for this and they're seeing it and they're like, this means a lot. Thank you. Sometimes that can be not all someone needs, but that can really help with the way that might feel, versus if there's just kind of, they may feel that that's taken for granted that they do that. So I think
that's so true.
Yeah. So for the others listening, if you're not the one who's kind of going out of your way all the time, making sure that those who are, you're expressing that it means a lot.
3 things you can do for them. 1, pick them up at the airport and don't make them take an Uber.
Yes.
Right? Second thing you can do is like buy their dinner. Like, let's take you out to dinner. Just thank you for coming here. I know it's a lot of money and time away from work and other things that you would want to do. And then the third, it might be that like they get a nicer present, like or something. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so then it's acknowledged rather than taken for granted.
I think that's huge. And I think for all of it, like, that's just kind of what in that example, or for just others in life, like that's huge. What about when it's around the holidays, when there's such a difference in lifestyle or habits? I was talking with somebody just the other day, and this wasn't specifically related to the holidays, but they have some family who's staying with them for a little bit until the house that they're going to be moving into is ready. And he said they drink every night, and he doesn't usually drink at all, but there's always like an open bottle of whatever, in the house. And so that was different for him. But then also the snack foods and, all this processed foods and snack foods that he's usually really stringent with. And he's like, it's only been a month, but he's feeling different because of the things he's eating and drinking because of this. So even when it's around the family and it's whether it's food or alcohol or exercise routines, sleep routines, how do we mesh these without seeming either like we're judging or we're not taking part with everybody else?
Oh, this is so good. Oh my God, this is so amazing. So let's first start with part of why holiday gatherings, these extended family events get strained is because it's a drag out battle to do it your way. And everyone's got to take a step back and go, okay, we're all here to hang out together. We're not here to replicate our original normal. And so then once that is the case, we have to start to then say, okay, so here's one great example I give to people. I love it when families say, hey, we're going to have it at our house. There is no expectation that we all hang out together. If you decide you need alone time, if you decide you want to go out to dinner, if you decide does that make sense? And so everyone gets to do largely what they want to do. I think it's really important that there's that level of freedom. So does it mean anything when someone says, we've been around each other a long time, I'm going in my room now and reading a book and I don't want to see anyone tonight? That's okay.
Right.
You need some chill space. So I think giving people the freedom
Permission
around that. Yeah. The second is, do my needs get crowded out? And let me give you an example from my life. My husband's in-laws are phenomenal. They're great. Love, love, love them. But they're from the upper Midwest, which means the cuisine there is very different than South Mississippi and Louisiana. Just so different. It's like meat and potatoes. And I'm like, there's not a lick of roughage in this. And so then it's, oh, well, let's make sure we have a salad, or let's make sure we have some healthy options. So I'll make it or I'll buy it. So that way we're making room for other
right.
people and what they like.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And so that's another piece. Now, when we veer into stuff where people have some more clear, there's a difference between salad and meatloaf, you know what I mean? A difference in oh, I'm a vegetarian and I don't eat meat. That's different than I'm a recovering alcoholic and I can't be around alcohol. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I would say when it gets to a boundary that's a little more intense, what happens then is that the person with the more intense boundary has to think about, okay, wait a minute, how do I make this work for me and everyone else? And that's really where I think a struggle, that's where things start to get hard, I think.
What are some of the, something that is a little bit more, I guess, heightened like that, or something that feels a little bit more serious, like with alcohol? Is that something that because I think that's a huge one around holidays, someone may be struggling with addiction. I mean, there's so many types of addiction. They could be struggling with alcohol. They could be struggling with drug addiction. And, we never know where someone is. So there's the obvious of offering those options that are non-alcoholic, but still not just water. But is that something that a way to bring it up or a way to address it? How would someone do that around the holidays?
Yeah. So the first thing I would ask someone as an individual, let's say you struggle with food addiction, and when you're around a lot of snacky foods, it's just really hard to resist, or you struggle with alcohol, or maybe you have social anxiety, a whole host of things. I would say the first thing you have to ask yourself is going there and being around it so important to you that you want everyone else to do what you need to do?
Yeah.
And I think that is a pretty tall order in families to ask everyone to accommodate to one person. And so it'd be if I am a vegetarian and I want everyone to eat a vegetarian meal for Thanksgiving, that to me is really unreasonable. Is it reasonable to say, I'm going to bring a vegetarian option or we're going to have that? Yeah, no, it makes no sense, or it makes complete sense. So I would say if your recovery is so important to you that health is a big priority, it may be that, hey, I can't make it. And it's okay. I don't want to cramp y'all's style, but my recovery is so important to me that I don't want to jeopardize it this year.
And it may not be forever, but it may be in that intense time. That's a little bit of that critical beginning. Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing though is let's take it even a step further. How about it's not necessarily that you can't be around it, but there are people that are going to make bad choices around you. So think about your relatives who maybe decide they want to get real drunk at a holiday. Does that make sense? Or that you might have, your kids may see other relatives of yours parent their kids in a little bit more intense way than you're comfortable with, or they may make comments that are politically in ways that really stress you out. Does that make sense? And so then we have to ask ourselves, okay, is it worth going if the other person isn't going to do that? And it may not be. It may be like, look, I just can't do that. I'm not going to get into all that. You can do whatever you want to do while you're there. But if you promise that can't happen, like if you promise that won't happen and then you do it, I can't be there. That's okay.
Right.
We just have to reinforce the boundary and know that it would not be worth it to be in an environment where someone's so drunk or so unhinged politically that you can't enjoy yourself. Does that make sense?
I think that's a really big takeaway on so many levels, is that self-protection or self-preservation, and realizing that that doesn't mean forever. It means this year or this event or in this critical time for whatever that might be that feels like it's more of a challenge right now. It's probably not always going to feel that heightened of a challenge, whether it is addiction or it is, clashing viewpoints or whatever that is. So it's not forever, but it's this year that maybe it's best. And being comfortable.
And when I ask people, well, maybe not even because you're going to be uncomfortable with it, but realizing that it's going to be really hard to be there in the middle of it when you don't want to be, and it's going to be hard to not go and be alone.
Yeah.
Both those things are hard, so you got to pick what hard you want.
Yeah.
And that you're gonna deal with. Lastly, on this, just because I think it's so important, around the political religious discussion thing, we've had a heightened attitude in our culture that everyone has to be almost like one extreme or the other, or heightenedly perfect where we're never going to make a mistake. Does that make sense? Where we're going to say something, oops, I didn't mean to offend you. And so I would think it's really important that that we think about, wait, what is like innocent or a mistake or not a big deal versus like huge. Does that make sense? And so let's say someone makes a comment like a joking comment about like, oh, aren't you glad Donald Trump's president? And that to me is not worth having a big argument about. It might be going, yeah, like then I would have to like make a joke and go, well, let's take a look at it. You want to debate right now, or you want to enjoy Christmas? Like, what do you want to do? Does that make sense? And so the point then is I would want people to get real clear around what's not acceptable, and then what's like, what can they joke about and then quash rather than erect these boundaries? Because then they don't go if they say, we can't ever talk about politics. Well, okay, if we're going to, then does that mean I get to like debate you too? Or no, it just means I have to hear it, but I can't come back at you.
Right.
That's usually why people don't like political discussions, is that Uncle Joe gets to say it, but no one can talk back to Uncle Joe.
Right.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, no, Uncle Joe, you open the door, Unc. So like, let's talk about it. Let's do it, And so that's where I would want people to ask that question out loud. It's like,
and
we can talk about it.
Maybe even almost like rehearsing it if they know this is coming, getting themselves ready so that they know how they're going to respond, like if and when, or not even if, but like when that question comes. One of the things that, I kind of had made some notes, and I think some of these we're hitting on them all bundled up. Setting those boundaries, which may sound like, I think it's kind of one of those, it's overstated or overused phrase, I need to set boundaries because, what does that really mean? And we can go in with that mindset. But then when Uncle Joe says that, what are we actually doing? Are we stepping right into that, or are we really setting those boundaries? And so, thinking ahead of time when certain scenarios happen, how are you going to handle it? Rehearsing it to yourself, or talking with your significant other or someone who's with you, or a trusted person who is going to be there, that they can kind of like have your back a little bit as you're in it, and sometimes even just talking through it can help you like bring yourself down before you're stepping into that. What about, and this kind of, I guess it's a little bit in the similar vein of the conversation, but sometimes when it's like that person, and let's just keep talking about Uncle Joe, who's that dominant personality, and it can almost be contagious, whether there's like a a negative energy or a stress or something that just has a tension. And I think that sometimes in families, maybe people you know what we're talking about. Like you can feel or you can sense that underlying tension. How do we insulate ourselves when that happens in a family space?
Yeah. I tend to like asking people, most people know who are the people. And then the question is, one, do you have enough of a relationship with them to call them ahead of time and say, last year at Christmas and the year before last and the year before last, this is just kind of like how it felt to me. And so then you blame it on yourself. I'm just really nervous this is going to happen again. Can we talk about like how it could happen different? Because it's making me really nervous. And so then you're blaming yourself a little bit, but then you're getting it up and out with them, like levels, rather than going into Christmas or going into New Year's Eve, crossing your fingers and hoping the last 10 years don't repeat when they very likely are going to. So it's about how do we set up the holidays for success, which is, hey, this is just how it's landed on me for several years. And I know you didn't intend that, but I'm just really nervous going into it. Can we talk about how I'd like it to be a little different? And then from there, what's the person, are they willing to hear you out a little bit? And then what does that look like? Does that make sense?
What if it's the person they're not so close with, but it's someone that it's in that, but they're not really in that close? Like and this may not be the right response, but sometimes when I see that or I sense that, others do too. And sometimes elements of it, it's almost, I don't know if it's like commiserate or see the humor with others, but you kind of know it and you try to let it roll off you as best you can versus letting that negativity like fill our space also.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, how many people half the time in family gatherings are when you're with your cousin rolling your eyes about so and so
Right.
and having a joke?
Right.
And that's a fantastic way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, yeah, oh, here we go.
Right.
And then absolutely in terms of making it funny. And the
So talking
reality
about
is
them.
that, yeah, well, I mean, and in a way that usually those people have very endearing traits as well.
You're right.
And so then it's a both and. Like my grandfather on my dad's side was an absolute character. Like when I was 9 years old, he had me watch Full Metal Jacket as a 9-year-old with him. And he was a complete character and he had a lot of flaws like we all do. But man, so many funny stories. And so I would encourage people to then like that suggestion you had about like find the aunt who's like in the corner going, and then just let it roll and have a good time with it. That's what I would do. Yeah, for sure.
Talk to us about the regression that happens with some people. They feel like they're almost regress back into that space when they were a kid, or I've had clients over the years say that when they go back to, I don't know, the grandmother's house or their parents' own house, they'll find themselves even from a food perspective doing things they used to do as a kid. Like they're like, I just open the pantry and I stand there. I stand in front of the fridge like they used to do like as a kid or these different challenges come up. They feel, and then sometimes in family dynamics, those old roles come into play. And especially for someone who's really worked so hard on themselves, it can feel like maybe they're disappointed in themselves that like, how did I let that slip so quickly? Like, how did I regress so quickly?
Yeah.
Like I've come so far. What happened?
Yeah, you're going to do that. I
just accept part of it.
just going to happen. I'll never forget one time when I brought the kids over to my mom. My mom called me afterward and said, I need y'all to help pick up before you leave. And I remember thinking, we all just assumed mom was just going to clean everything up. Like, what? That is insane. Why would I have thought that? And I'm like, I'm a 40-year-old. Like, what?
I love that she let you know that.
Yeah. Well, moms were like, well, I'm kind of busy this weekend. I'm like, wait, what? What's going on? I'm like, wait, tell me more. And so then it was like, oh, we don't want a tornado in the house. Cool. Got it. And it's such a fair statement rather than just sucking it up and saying, well, I just am glad they're coming, so I'm going to let that go. But And then I joke now, I'm like, ooh, I'm putting everything in the washing machine, as a joke. So
Yeah.
it is important to have those cues. I find for me, giving myself some breaks from certain holiday celebrations, like every other Thanksgiving we travel just as a unit of four. And so then what happens when I go the next year, it's not like I'm in such a habit where I'm like in my same, it still feels a little bit like I'm there, but not like back to being a kid again. Cause I don't do it every single year.
Yeah.
And if that's a thing where you're like, when I go, I feel like they're always like poking fun at me, for instance. So that's something that happens in your family unit. Or when I go, I'm always the one who has to cook and clean with mom because that's what I've always done. Then sometimes not going a little bit can kind of break that up
Yeah.
because they need someone else to do it when you're not there. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Right.
And then you show up the next year and someone's taken it on potentially, and then it kind of breaks that up. So it's another solution for people too, if they find it's pretty hard and ingrained.
I think the last thing for us to talk through, the last thing I have on my list, unless there's other stuff that we want to cover, is the that pressure for perfection. I think that so many of us go into the holidays with, and if it's not us going into the holidays with this like drive for like must be perfect, everything's got to be, just so. I think all of us, if it's not us, we can all think of people that we're close with that we see they're doing this. And I think some of that, just that alone is creating so many of those pressures on ourselves. And so just some guidance on how to let go of that, how to like in that moment shift from like what the shoulds are for that perfect holiday, and then really what matters and having these real connections and conversations. Like what are some things that people can kind of tuck away for in the moment to really make the most? Because also I think sometimes once it's over, people can tell in hindsight, they reflect and they realize, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't ask the person about these things. I didn't even spend time with this person. I was too busy trying to make sure all these other things were happening perfectly over here. They can reflect on that, but now it's too late. So in the moment, what can someone do to try to get themselves out of that?
I think it starts right now, which is how do you want your holiday insert name of holiday to be and feel? Because inevitably, when we want something to be perfect, what we're really talking about, Molly, is I want there to be this experience of like the crusted brown turkey, or I want like gold trim on the Christmas tree, or I want this music in the background. So getting very clear around what you want it to be, and do you get a lot of joy like creating that experience for people? And if you do, fantastic. I would say then write it out and make sure you're like doing it. If you're like, no, I like them to gather, but I could care less if it looks like Christmas World in my house, then you may have like a little tree on the table, and that's it. But then getting really clear again about what you like, what fills you up, what you want. And then all of a sudden there's an awakening where it's, oh, well, I don't need to do that. Or, I like pumpkin pie, but I don't like it enough to make four of them. And we've had this kind of like Martha Stewart image of like, it needs to be like this. And really what she was going for was having people get better at elevating experiences, which is a really cool thing. Like there's a difference in having like an amazing Christmas where it looks like that. But if you're not getting any joy out of doing it, then I like in any relationship, I would not want you doing it just for me. I would want you to be getting something out of it as well. So that's what you have to ask yourself. And then make sure you're being intentional with the planning and the stuff you're doing. So that way it either happens or you tell everyone, look, like this year it's going to be chilly and I'm excited. And that's it. And like everybody knows. Or we're going to order food from Whole Foods this year and call it a day. And that's okay.
Thinking about, if someone says, well, what really matters? And if someone says, well, family or the people that are there having those conversations, then just like someone may have like their Martha Stewart list for decorating, then you may also even, this is going to sound, I haven't done this, but I'm kind of thinking like, sometimes I'll think back and gosh, I didn't ask that person. I wanted to ask about whatever this is with them, or I didn't even get to have that much time talking with that person. Maybe that becomes like a new version of your checklist, is making sure that the people who were there, that in your heart are really what that holiday is all about. That part of what you're planning and thinking of is who's going to be there, what's been going on with them, and asking these questions, which can also then help people not feel, like we were saying in the very beginning, that there's a lack of connection. Like maybe everything looks perfect, but what's actually really happening with people. And so even thinking through, as someone's mapping out their to-do list for the holidays, it's also thinking who's going to be there and maybe what are some of the things to talk with them about.
Yeah, all of those things are make complete sense. Like, or what kind of game do we want to play? You know what? We're not going to order. We're going to order food and we're going to play a game.
Yeah.
Or we're going to share pictures and talk about like memories.
Yeah.
Like, what do we want it to look like? Now, be prepared. There are going to be a lot of people in your life who are like, no, I want turkey and I want to watch football. Cool, great.
Right.
You know, like, great, cool. We have a den for you to go to. And so then everybody gets to kind of like do their thing. And as long as you are allowing people to kind of like have their space to be themselves for the most part, like that's when holidays generally go, okay, it's when we need it to be a certain way for ourselves or we're needing other people to be a certain way is when it starts to falter. And that's what I would want people to most take away from this.
That was just what I was going to say. The one or two things like in the moment, kind of like the mental strategies that someone can kind of catch themselves. Like, what would you say, like our last takeaway for people to kind of insulate or arm themselves with?
So the first thing is remind yourself what it generally is like, not like crossing your fingers and hope this year is different. And when you remind yourself what it's like, what do you not want to happen? And so then what does that look like? Does that mean going, not going, having a conversation, setting it up for that, for success? And then in the moment is making sure that you're around, when you're around your people and your family that you always connect with. And that can like kind of take the edge off sometimes when there are things going on that kind of stress you out rather than just focusing on that one person, because more than likely everyone's having the same experience of being annoyed.
Right. No, I think that all of this is super helpful. You know, we talk so much about how to have healthy holidays and what are the different recipes and how do you bring nutrition and movement and all these things into the holidays. I think coming into it with this mindset of connection versus perfection. I think this is all really great. I will be on the lookout for another topic that you and I can do sometime.
I can't wait. Yes. It's gonna be fun. Yeah. We need to do trips. Since we've had some good trips, we should talk about travels for people. How do you travel in ways that like reduce the friction? I think a lot of people don't want to travel because all they focus on is the friction of travel. And so how do you like travel in ways that have less friction and more fun? So that could be a talk.
And just enough planning to get you in the right place, but without over planning yourself so that you can kind of be flexible with it.
Yeah.
I think this is lovely. I love that your guidance in helping us really think through what's happening beneath the surface in some of these circumstances. Also just talking through it and the things that you're sharing. You know, we all struggle with these things, and it's something that once we realize this, it can take it out. It doesn't feel personal anymore. It's, you know, perfection is never going to be attainable. And so, you know, these are things that once we slow down and we think about what really matters, what's happening under the surface, and this practical and compassionate guidance you have for us on how to handle this. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. One last thing, everyone clean up the dishes. All right. So everybody pitch in, not just the moms and aunts. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Always grateful to Dr. Sawyer for joining us. I love his take. I love his humor. I love his just kind of personal connections that he shares. It really helps us, you know, it helps so much to realize that it's not something that's just us that's thinking something or feeling a certain way. So when he's sharing kind of his own experiences, it always kind of drives it home and of course adds that humor. I'll include the links that we talked about in the show notes of this episode, and always let us know what you think as you are experiencing, you know, some of the different dynamics that happen through holidays and beyond. And as you incorporate some of the strategies that Dr. Sawyer talked about, we always want to hear about it. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you'd like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next time for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.